Well, Jacob Lee, here we are at the end of a pretty wild year, highs and lows for a lot of us, and kind of a year that almost feels like what has been almost a social experiment for a lot of us. I know you've kind of brought out new music, there's been a lot going on, but if we pause your creative journey just for a moment here, how are you right in this moment? How have you survived all of this, given all the stuff that's gone on around it and still trying to create amongst a pandemic and a lot of other things in life?
Yeah, I'm feeling like a mixture of like pride and fatigue, to be honest. For the first time ever, like I've been trying to juggle a vast range of different things, and usually as someone who can kind of pursue through that, I felt like I've actually needed a bit of a break near the end of this year. So we are finalizing so many things this month, and it's been really exciting to kind of integrate all of this new content into my social media, which I've never actually done before, which is stuff like this and doing long form live sessions and things which I don't usually do because I have a model and a blueprint which I follow. But it's been nice to kind of like brainstorm these ideas and get them out to people and know that there is at least a week off coming within the next, I would say 3 weeks. I might get about 7 days off. So
7 days off to regroup and launch into a huge 2022 by the sound of it. But a lot of stuff you touch on I do want to get into, but now that we've started in the present, I want to go back a ways and go back to the start of a lot of this, because obviously you're a Gold Coast man, you've grown up doing a lot of stuff, you've obviously done a lot of music stuff from day one, but we've seen a lot of artists and Aussie artists lately kind of blow up from busking and all of that, and I do believe that has a little bit of a part in your own story. So let's wind the clock back a little bit and go down memory lane. Take me back to those early days, like being from a Gold Coast, you're performing in Surface. What were those early days like when you first started to kind of get this journey kick-started in those very initial days?
Yeah, it was just me being completely naive to all of the music industry, you know, and just knowing that I like to sing and I like to write songs, and that was really it for me. And so I was simply trying to find ways to do that in front of people. And for the first few years of me doing that, I was just doing it in front of mum and dad and my brother and my dog, you know, and they were kind of like listening to songs on the radio and being like, you could cover that or you could cover that, and I would just go and do that for them. And I think as I slowly kind of evolved and realized what I wanted to do and how much I loved this, I started thinking that it would be a good idea to share that with people, obviously. And so busking was kind of my outlet because that was the easiest way that I could get in front of people. And so I applied at the local council. They approved me when I was like 10 or something like that. And just ended up performing for years on the streets around Surfers Paradise in different areas, and experiencing what it was like to perform for people who had no idea who I was, and no family or friends, just people who were walking through the mall, you know, and sometimes I would get a massive group of people watching me, and other times no one would listen, you know. And so I think it was good for me to realize that I needed to hone and practice and learn my craft so that I could engage people on a way that I wanted to. And I think that was kind of the beginning for me in realizing what I needed to do as a performer and a frontman, I guess, to make people interested in my art, I guess. So
yeah, absolutely. And I guess, you know, you don't have the familiarity of the family and the dog, very importantly too, but it's putting yourself in that situation. Like, what was your setup during that time? Like, was it just you with your acoustic? Like, what were you playing? What songs were actually kicking around in the hallowed streets of Surfers Paradise? Yeah,
I literally just had my acoustic with a stomp box, which I eventually kind of implemented maybe like a year in. And that's just because I felt like it was too empty, you know. And if you do want people to stop, you do need some sort of beat, because that is what people get drawn toward. You can't expect people to listen to lyrics when they haven't been drawn in first. And so even though that was and still is my priority and my most favorite thing to do, I do realize that that isn't the first thing that captures people. And so I needed to bring in something as simple as a stomp box to just give people that kind of familiarity, I guess, so they would come over and listen to what I was doing. Eventually I added a loop station, and I was inspired by Ed Sheeran, as most acoustic artists were at the time. And I saw him play 3 times live one at River Stage, and then as he got bigger, he was doing bigger stadiums and arenas. And I was just inspired and motivated by the fact that he could hold an entire crowd with just a loop station and a guitar. And so I wanted to do that too. And I was doing that on a much smaller scale in Surfers Paradise, and eventually took that to cafes and little clubs and pubs, and tried to get like paid gigs instead of, you know, relying on what people would throw into my case. And eventually, I think through that experience and doing that for years and years and years, I had all of these hours under my belt of performing for people who, again, had no idea who I was and weren't even there for me. And so it helped me learn how to be a lot more engaging as a performer, I think.
Absolutely. And I mean, it comes through, you've obviously grown quite beyond that small scale of people not knowing who you are. Like, you've gone overseas, which is something I want to touch on later as well. But in that really early phase, like when you were with your family and doing all of that, what music was resonating with you? Like, were you the type of kid that there were particular bands you heard on the radio and that was like, ooh, I want to sing that, or this? Like, were you drawn to stuff in particular, or was it just what was around you as an environmental kind of input?
Weirdly, I was mostly inspired by heavy metal, which is something that surprises most people because my music is so like innocent
I love
and
this.
calm. But when I was growing up, I feel like most teenagers, I had this angsty period of feeling like, firstly, I knew everything, and my parents were wrong and they didn't understand me, and all the things that we feel when we're growing up. So I found that I related to the intensity within the genre and the lyricism. And I think, again, like, because lyricism is so important to me, when I was listening to pop music on the radio, it didn't have the depth. It seemed to kind of hang on the surface level. And so I would seek that out in other genres, and metal seemed to be that for me. You know, people aren't screaming about things that are trivial. And I found that I really related to what they were talking about. Even though I wasn't depressed, I didn't have anxiety. I maybe thought I did, you know, but I was going through what is for most a very uncertain period where you're just trying to find who you are. And for me, I was inspired by the depth that they were speaking about in those songs. And I think even though I'm doing, you know, acoustic and pop music, I found that I've taken that with me and ingrained that into my music. So
yeah, and I think it's interesting, a lot of that music, like, it is really cathartic, and as a songwriter, as a vocalist, you do seem to have a very empathetic, and I don't mean emotional in a irrational way, like, you seem to really wear your heart on your sleeve. Like, how integral is it to get really introspective when you are writing these beautiful songs that just grip you and take you with you, basically?
I feel like it's insanely important. Like, I need to be alone when I write, or create anything, to be honest. I find that I'm a lot more comfortable by myself, and so if I am alone in the sense of even like no one being in the next room, like no one can even like hear me. I need to be completely just like isolated, so I can feel like I can, if I want to yell, if I want to scream, if I want to cry, if I want to do anything that's emotional, I feel like I can without having any judgment. And so even though I, you know, live with my partner Nikki and all the people I'm around I trust and I know they're not judging me, I still don't want them near me when I'm doing that kind of thing. I feel like I do need to be completely like isolated for that. So that assists me in getting into an emotive and I guess some subconscious kind of state. And it's something I speak about frequently to people who know my music. There is a subconscious level to what I think I do. And I say I think I do because at the end of the day, I have no idea how these things are created. It could just be imagination. It could simply be creativity, or it could be something more. To me, I get this vibrational feeling that really kind of sets me in the now. And once I feel that, that's usually when I develop something that I deem interesting. And I found through, I guess, doing this for a while now, the response I get from those songs seem to be greater than the ones that I've written for more of a, I guess, like a marketing kind of standpoint or perspective. You know, like there's more authenticity from the beginning, and I think that kind of transcends when I release that music.
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly, with that process for you, like, at what stage do you allow other people to kind of come in and listen and actually start to be a part of it? Because obviously it would be such a personal thing, and I'm with you, I don't like to have people around me in a creative sense sometimes, and then I'm always a little bit hesitant to pass it over. Like, at what point do you allow someone to come in and actually start to be part of that process?
At the very end. Yeah, like literally right once the song is finished.
Yep.
For me, as once the story is complete, I feel as though I'm more happy to allow others in, because that to me kind of it shows that the song and the narrative is complete, and so the emotion has been contained within that, and so anything else that is added on afterwards, it can be an addition, something I'm actually willing to add on top of. But if someone's coming through the phase of me having that emotion, I feel like it might get convoluted, perhaps. And I just don't want that, because I want to give people what is inherently me. And I feel as though they feel that when I release that. And there's been a few times when I've performed on stage where people have stopped me during the performance, and this is a room of like 400, 500 people, and like they've yelled out saying, "Hey, can I say something?" And I'm like, because my shows are very intimate and quiet, I can hear them. And I usually just go, yeah, like, what do you want to say? And there's been 2 times where someone has yelled out and said, "Your music helps us. I want to speak on behalf of everyone here. Like, we feel what you're doing." And usually the crowd will then like agree and cheer, and I'm like on stage just like freaking out, like what I wrote in my garage is actually resonating with someone over in Europe or in America or something like that. And so I think having that validation or that reinforcement, I would say, helps me to realize that when I am creating alone and feeling these things, it is connected to people, because at the end of the day we all do feel similar things. Even though it's completely circumstantial and situational, the feeling and the emotion we get is quite similar, I would say.
Absolutely. And given you are putting a lot of yourself into these songs and into these performances and obviously connecting with people, how do you feel after you bring these songs to life and create? Do you feel elated? Do you feel depleted? Like, how do you come out of that and kind of then resume and go to the next step? Like, do you need a regroup, or what happens in that time?
For me, I get more energy from that, to be honest. We were saying earlier about social fatigue, and I feel as though I'm someone who is straight up introverted. I do get that when I'm around a lot of people. On the other side, when I'm alone creating, even though it is quite intensive, and especially lyrically for me, like I'm so pedantic on what I want to say, that it takes me a while to really get the perfect kind of words, in my opinion, obviously, of what should be released and distributed. And so even though it does kind of take a toll in that regard, I do feel more energetic, because there's that adrenaline and excitement of going, okay, now that song is finished and I've captured that feeling, and now that exists forever, you know, and I can sing that forever if I want to, and it'll be on Spotify forever. And it's something that, whether it be half an hour or whether it be a week of working on one song, or even longer, like some songs of mine have taken 8 months to finish. I know that it's now packaged into one 4 to 5 minute or 3 minute piece, and I can then hold on to that as almost like a token or a legacy piece, where that's captured now, you know. It's a moment in time which I can share with people forever. So
absolutely. And again, your music really does lend itself, it's got that timeless quality to it, so I like that you kind of, it feels like that for you as well in how you create it. But in terms of how you do bring it to life, I read you say in an interview that prior to 2020 it was just you and an acoustic guitar, but noticeably you are starting to like bring more elements into it. Like, how does you're sitting down, no one's in, you know, the vicinity or 2 rooms down the track. How is it all coming together? It's still you and an acoustic, or are you now bringing in other instrumental elements a bit more? Like, what do you enjoy the most when you write?
Lately it has definitely been more synth based, which has been so fun for me, because I've wanted to teach myself production for a very long time, and because I'm hanging around people who are so good at it, I actually didn't move toward it because I felt as though I couldn't reach that level. And so that was a self-limiting belief, I guess, and I decided through COVID to, you know, I had more time, and so I could actually go and download Pro Tools and figure it out. And I decided to just spend a couple hours a day on that. And so instead of a couple hours, I got obsessed like most things, and I ended up doing it all day. And I wouldn't say I'm anywhere near the level I want to be with production. However, now I do have the ability to pre-produce my music and get it to a level where I'm really happy with the themes and the sounds and the direction. And so once that's complete, I've painted a picture for Matt, my producer, and Luke and Ian, who plays keys on my music, to kind of step off of, I guess. You know? And so I'm excited that I actually do have that ability now, and I spent a lot of time trying to hone that craft. And as I said, like, there is a very long journey for me to be like a self-sufficient producer where I would be happy to go from A to B and release it. I know I'm not there yet, but I've spent most of my life honing my songwriting, and that's where I know that's what I'm good at, and that's what I need to focus on completely, and everything else is going to be an addition for me. And so in the most roundabout answer, I found that even though acoustic is still quite inherent and something that I really do feel more connected to, and that's just because I've done it for so long, the production side and adding like all the synths that I bought and my modular setup, that's just been really fun, you know, and I've been able to create music that I definitely wouldn't have if I was only doing it acoustically.
Well, and a good use of time during a lockdown and a pandemic too. Like, it's always good to have a little bit of extra arsenal up your sleeve with that stuff. But you touched on obviously the songwriting and all of that going back. I mean, I know you were taught acoustic guitar. I believe you played the French horn early on, which, hats off, that's like a really difficult instrument. My music teacher tried to make me play it and I was like, no, I can't play that. But when, like, obviously we're really interested in words and all of that stuff too, like, what kind of was your forefront? Did you like just love reading and do all of that, and you were doing the music stuff on the side? When was the moment where those two worlds collided and you realised there was actually something here that you could move forward with and marry your two passions incidentally?
Yeah, the first passion was writing even before singing. I would go on Google, like way back when it was like dial-up internet, and go on Google Images and like type in like random things, like could be animals or whatever, and scroll until I found something that looked inspiring. And then I would just write a short story like all about that particular image, and it would all be like, if I read them now, I'm sure they would suck, but I back then thought they were really deep and like philosophical and like existential, and it's something that I felt called toward, I guess. And so as I found that I just enjoyed singing, lyricism felt like the obvious choice to me because I could pair them so cleanly. And now that's obviously what I'm continuously doing. And this alias that I use, which I don't know why, this lowly lyricist character, which is now a protagonist to another project which I'm working on, I feel as though for some reason that is my purpose, to create special lyrics and stories, and I think that I'm getting decent at it. However, I know that again I'm nowhere near where I want to be as a songwriter. I want to be an author, and I want to play with words in all of the formats that I can. And I'm 27, so I think I've got a lot of time to get better at that, but I don't know, I just get very obsessed with emoting through words and seeing what people's responses are when I read them something, or whether it be poetry, or again when I sing them something, and I can be on a stage and look out at everyone and see that they're engaged and looking at me and they're in that moment with me, and it shows that I'm not delusional, that there is actually something here that there's a gift or something that I've crafted that I can give to people, you know, and that excites me.
Yeah, it's that connectivity, I think, like the absolute power of words. A lot of times when you listen to a song, like, it doesn't mean it's a bad song if you're not feeling that, but there is just a difference between something stopping you in your tracks, and you get that with so many of your songs. And a big factor is obviously the songwriting, the lyrics, but another big factor undoubtedly is your vocals. Like, you've got so much light and shade, there's so much silk going with it, but I love you do have the occasional like lovely Aussie lilt coming through as well. Like, it's not you know, so pristine that you can't tell a lot of who you are and where you've come from. How did you hone this voice into what it is today? Like, do you have any amazing backstory to how you actually shaped it? And because I know you started with choirs and stuff early on as well, like, when did it kind of kick into that, and how do you maintain it after probably doing it a very long time at this point? Yeah,
it's definitely a muscle for sure. And so when I go through periods of either writing, because I'm not actually singing like well, if that makes sense, I'm kind of just like mumbling and like, you know, just I'm not actually performing and whatnot. So I find that if I'm just writing, or if I'm on like a full marketing kind of campaign and I haven't sung for a while, I feel like I sound awful when I get back into it, and so I need to practice and train and get it back like any muscle. Choir, I guess, did assist when I was younger, even though I didn't really enjoy it that much, to be honest. I think it helped me learn harmonies, which has been really valuable in recording, especially when I'm recording alone, because I can hear what harmonies are necessary and just do that. And so I think, honestly, it might sound odd or lame, but I've just loved it so much, and that's the reason I think I've become decent at it. Because I just do it all day. Like Nikki, like she's around me all the time because we live together, obviously, and I'm just singing all day, you know, just like either humming something, or if there's something stuck in my head, I'm always kind of vocalizing that. And I just really, really enjoy it. And so I've never really had any lessons as such. It's just been something which I've felt called toward, and I still love it equally as much as I did when I was like 5. So.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. And I mean, you don't always have to love what you do, but when you're doing it that often, it is a very nice side effect that it is something you still enjoy, especially when creativity becomes your day job. It can sometimes it can sometimes lose its sheen, but that's awesome to hear. And like on the road, on tour, like obviously there's been less of that lately. What do you do? Like, because a lot of singers I speak to, they're like, oh, I don't talk to anyone on the day of a show, or, you know, I communicate with hand signals and stuff like that. Like, do you have a on the road ritual that helps maintain and get you through it, or are you just naturally able to survive it without having to lift much of a finger?
I really should have something, because I get sick really easily. It's so brutal. Like, I just feel like if I look the wrong way, I have like a cold. And so on tour, I should have more rituals, and I'm putting them in place now with like the European tour that's coming, to try and remain healthy so my voice actually can be sustained through the entire tour. It's funny, I don't get nervous until like 2 minutes before I get on stage, and then it just like hits me and I'm like, oh, like shit, like I actually have to jump on stage now and perform for however many people are out there. So I think like me being overly quite a calm, chill, relaxed person, throughout the day it's very normal. And even backstage, it's very normal. I'm just kind of talking to people and chilling out. And then as soon as the sound guy or whoever's organizing comes and lets me know that I'm about to jump on, then I have that moment of like, oh shit, like there are people there for me and I need to entertain them for an hour. But again, once you jump on stage, all of that goes away, you know? You feel at home, or I feel at home on stage. It's literally the place I feel most comfortable. Even more so than my actual home, which is so weird to me. And I think that's why with COVID it's been actually quite difficult, because I've not been on stage in like 2 years, like at all. Like I've performed on Instagram live streams and YouTube streams and like Twitter spaces, but I've not actually been in front of anybody. And I feel like there's been a disparity kind of within me, like trying to figure out and remind myself why I do music sometimes. And even though writing gives me a lot of fulfillment, being on stage is that for me. Like that's the pinnacle for me. And I actually get to see the impact I have on people, and reading comments just doesn't do it, you know? Like I still appreciate them, I'm grateful for them, but reading comments through a screen is not the same as actually looking into somebody's eyes and realizing they are impacted by what you do. And so I'm missing that a lot. And so I'm hoping that my tour in Europe in February happens, because the last 3 have been cancelled. And so we have to wait and see. We're planning for it, and we're acting as though everything is going ahead. And we'll have to wait and see for that. But I'm looking forward to getting in front of people again and allowing, I guess, that connection to happen between everybody. I just feel like that's something that really gives me energy, you know, and so I'm looking forward to that again.
Yeah, the power of live music and having that shared moment, like you said, you can watch something on a screen, and after I was trying to get into the whole live stream thing and watch it and be like, oh, you know, get amongst it. It just doesn't have that same emotional feeling with it. And I think for someone like you too with that music, and if you can, like, if people are yelling out and expressing that in that moment, like, yeah, you don't quite get that with the Instagram stuff. But how have you gone with the whole like lockdown stuff? Like, how have you traversed it? Like you've mentioned, you've done live streams and stuff like that. Like, have you tried to maintain as much of that as possible, or are you more focused on planning for the tour? Like, what are you really brought out of this lockdown the most, do you reckon, for the next stage?
Yeah, I've just found that, like, luckily most of my marketing throughout my whole career has been digital anyway.
Yeah.
And so I've been focusing a lot on my streaming and my views and trying to get those really kind of pumping monthly. And so when COVID hit, I would say I was quite lucky in that people were going more to the internet because they couldn't go outside as much. And so I found that initially I wasn't affected too badly. However, as it's been so extended and this has happened for so long, that's when I started to realize how much I get from live performance, you know? And I feel as though, again, I've been very lucky in that I've had a sustainable career digitally and through Spotify and Apple Music and everything like that. But it has been a bit of a wake-up call in knowing and recognizing what it is that I do music for. And even though I've always known it's for everybody else, and I don't exactly treat it like a therapy like a lot of artists do. I really do write to hopefully relate to others. Not being able to see them has just been the biggest kind of punch for me, I would say. And so, yeah, I think we've all had that though in different ways. And so I can't really say that mine's any worse than anyone else's because it's definitely not. And I'm grateful for the fact that I still have other means of income and ways to connect with people. But I would say if I was to narrow it down on the thing that has been the most difficult with COVID, it's definitely been the fact that all my tours have just been shut.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, bringing up the streaming side and the digital side too, I mean, it's astronomical to fathom your reach. Like, you are sitting close to 400 million streams across all your platforms. As an artist, most people at this point probably would have signed with a label or done something quite dramatic, but you've remained independent. Is there a particular reason why that's the case?
Yeah, I've honestly just felt as though I haven't found anyone who really aligns with me yet, to be honest. There's been many conversations with managers and lots of conversations with labels, and there have been some really good outcomes from those conversations. However, once it gets to a point where we're very close to actually signing on and moving forward, that is when the intent seems to arise and emerge. And that's not to say people are always doing things for the wrong reasons at all. I just think that I have a very particular vision for what I want to achieve and who I want to do it with and what I want to leave behind. I'm very legacy driven, I guess, and I know that might sound a bit meta, but I just am. I want to leave something. And if people aren't going to be aligned with my particular vision and my pathway, I feel as though it's just going to dilute what I want to do. And so, seeing as I have been alone most of, well, this entire career, apart from moral support, obviously, with people who I love and who love me, it's I've just not been able to locate those individuals who really can like push forward what I'm hoping to accomplish. And so I might be shooting myself in the foot a little bit, to be honest. I'm sure I could probably be further than I am if I signed on with some of these labels, which I have spoken to over the past few years. But I also believe that I wouldn't be doing the most authentic music, and I wouldn't be pushing forward like my actual persona as much, because there would be a lot of voices kind of coming at me to be someone who I might not be. And I've found that through my career that I've really developed my character off authenticity, and I feel like those who follow me know that, and I kind of wear my heart on my sleeve a little bit and let people know when I'm not feeling that good, and what I want to provide and leave behind, and what I hope to give them, and all of those kind of things. And so I really don't want to jeopardize that, you know. And so I think eventually down the line, if I do find somebody or a group or a company or a label or management who can really kind of jump on board with what I'm hoping to leave, then that'll be awesome, because I want to work with more people. But for now, I've found that I've developed a different team of creatives instead. And so I'm working with people who I love in film and who I love musically, and who have really great perspectives on the music industry as well. And so it seems like it's not a label as such, but there are so many people around me who are just extremely talented and skilled and have awareness as to what the industry wants. And so I can kind of live within that balance of knowing that I'm being completely authentic. However, I do have the, I guess, those mouthpieces around me to let me know if I'm doing something that isn't conducive to what the environment wants, you know? So, yeah, and I think that's a really refreshing take, because I feel like you could easily take the shortcut and get to here, but I feel like your destination is there regardless. And
I think you're the type of person that would just rather do it your way and get to that end point and feel like you've done it exactly how you wanted to, rather than sacrificing it. And, you know, it's not about who's kind of in your team and constantly spruiking you. Like, your work's doing that. And I feel like with a lot of creativity, like, people aren't, or well, sometimes people do it, but you're not creating for someone else necessarily. A lot, it starts with you, and that it comes through again in your music. So it's pretty incredible. And as I said at the start, just refreshing change of pace. But on the topic too of digital stuff, social media, you have been a little bit more ambiguous this year than previous years on social media. Is there a reason as to why that is?
I think I'm just a dad now.
Yes.
I feel as though I've just had a lot more going on, which hasn't actually been tied to business or my career.
Yeah.
And trying to locate the balance has been tough, if I'm honest with you. And I feel like I'm not sure how long it takes for a new parent to adapt to that, but it's taken me a while. I feel like the balance between ambition and business and trying to accomplish like an independent music career alongside being a good partner and a good dad and a good son and all of those kind of things where, you know, you do have to be present daily. That's been not like difficult, but it's just been brand new. You know, it's been something I've not had to really navigate before, where I need to take care of this small little human being and make sure that he's happy and fed and loved, and make sure that my partner feels as though I'm being a good partner to her too. And I feel like as someone who is trying to take over the world with music, having that drawing me away from that it's been like this imbalance, to be honest. And even though the career with music is fantastic and being a dad is amazing, trying to do both simultaneously and do them both well has been something which has just like thrown me off really hard for a fair few months this year. And so I've been working off habit more than passion, to be honest with you. Just working off of what I know works and getting it done so that everything can continue and I can financially sustain myself and my family and everything like that. So I'm looking forward to getting better at that so I can just like bring the passion back into it and allow myself to feel that excitement again. And that's not to say that I'm not happy, obviously. I'm really happy. I think life is fantastic. But I just feel as though when new things happen in a big way, and being a dad and a parent is one of those things, it takes a while to really like figure out how you want to navigate that whole thing, you know, and foster that whole thing. And it's I feel like I'm on the back end of that now. I'm feeling like the balance is coming to center, which is great.
Well, it's finding your groove with that, and there's no rule book. Like, everyone can say, oh, you know, it'll get better at this point. Like, it's not like a day here in advance that you can be like, oh, that's when it's going to get normal. But I guess it makes you a good creative problem solver, which you probably already are based on everything else you're doing around it. Like, what do you do for yourself? And like, obviously having a partner and a kid, all of that, like, what are you actually doing to maintain yourself and your family and your art as well? Like, do you do stuff away from the creativity, away from the business side of music? Because it is a business at the end of the day. What is happening in your daily life to get you through?
I think that's part of the finding of balance, because prior to having a son and I had a lot more time creatively, my outlet was that as well. And so even though it was business, it never felt like that to me. Like, I never did anything else apart from go to the gym. Like, that was maybe the time when I actually put down everything and just like had moments with myself to just like listen to a podcast or listen to music and just go to the gym or go for a run or something. But every other like aspect of my day has been just creativity, songwriting, marketing, social media, and I never felt burnt out from it. But again, with the added fatherhood and everything else, even just COVID, like everything else that's been happening throughout the past 2 years, I felt as though the burnout has kind of seeped up the back of my neck now, and I've realized that, okay, I do need to allow time for rest. You know, and I feel like that's probably why I keep getting sick as well. If I just got to stop being ridiculous and know that working yourself into the ground, even though you love what you do, is never a clever move at the end of the day. And so I've found that I do need to actually take some time to put my phone away, like shut it off and put my laptop away. And even though I'll have immediately the inclination to just like whip the laptop back open and keep going, because I have that, if I'm not progressing and I'm not being productive, I feel lazy and I feel guilty. I need to like try and like remove that mentality a little bit and realize that everyone needs rest, you know, especially for me now with everything that's been going on. Now that we're entering December and we're kind of finishing and everyone is having a break, I might actually take that on board and do that with everyone else and just kind of like, do this for like a week and just like relax and sit, because I need it, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's really difficult. Like, again, it comes back down to that passion when you love it, and when it's not something you have to go into an office and come home and shut yourself off from. It's so hard to give that, like, pull the roller door shut and actually put it over there for a minute. But again, it probably is why you actually can output what you do. But when you do open the laptop or the phone up, like, there has been some talk on social of the Jacob Lee Music Archives. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I know there's been a little bit more going on there, more things you're doing to add into your very busy schedule.
I would say this has given me more of the excitement than anything lately, to be honest with you. And I feel like there's been a little bit of a disparity between what I'm passionate about right now and the fan base that I have. Some people are understanding it, some people aren't. And so I've been locating or trying to figure out how to articulate what I'm doing without being too overbearing to those who don't care about it or don't understand it yet. And I get that now. I feel as though when you get really obsessed with something, you think that everyone else is feeling that way when they might not be. However, this whole NFT thing which is going on is just a brand new landscape and something which I feel like all creatives will be doing soon. And so I think people often look at things of this nature and feel like they're a bubble or they're just like a phase, where in my opinion, with the ridiculous amount of research I've done into it now, I don't feel as though it is. I feel like there's a brand new way of creating and distributing artwork, not just music. So I've become semi-obsessed with trying to release my music in a brand new format. And that's not to say that I'm not doing music videos and releasing on DSPs and all of the above. Like, I am continuously going to do that. That's where I make my money. That's where I reach people. But I'm looking forward into what might be next. And I could be wrong as well. Who knows? It could disappear tomorrow and I could be completely incorrect. I'm totally aware of that and okay with that if it does disappear. But with what I've seen, artists and people who draw and people who dance and comedians and anyone who does anything creative is finding like solace and peace in the fact that they can create in a way that isn't algorithmically driven, and they can go into this NFT sphere and create tokens or collectibles or exciting like assets which people can hold and invest in to support those people. And it's not only support that they get, they actually financially might benefit from investing in the artist because they're holding something which might go up in value. And I think it's just an interesting brand new piece of technology which hasn't been around before, and personally I'm seeing great success in it, to be honest. I can't find any other Australian artist doing it right now. I'm sure there are some, but I've looked and can't find anybody. And so there might be 20 people in the whole NFT sphere that I've found that are doing music NFTs properly. I'm glad to say that I hopefully, in my opinion, am one of them. This whole music archive thing is my attempt at allowing people to own the commercial rights of some of the songs that I've released. So instead of no one being able to do anything with my music apart from me, now I can provide commercial licensing to people who own that particular token. And so they might like artistry, or they might like I Belong to You, or whichever song that I've released, they can go and purchase an NFT which represents that, and then they can go and use that for their podcast, or they can use it for their YouTube channel, and they have full whitelist like access to go and do that, you know. And so I don't know, I feel like that's a valuable thing for people. And I'm excited for all these songs which have been out for years now to actually get a breath of life into them, where other people can use that instead of only me. So
well, it's a whole new world of things, and everyone's kind of spoken about it, but I think the implication of the music aspect of it, it makes a lot of sense. Like you said, you can actually go and tangibly use it somewhere, but it's also another way that you're bringing fans into your world, like so intrinsically, like they're becoming part of your world basically. And speaking of your music, I mean, there's obviously, you've had your 2 albums. You had 2019 with Philosophy, you had 2020 with Conscience. There's been some EPs in the way as well, but the last release after Conscience was an EP. Is there a reason you went down the track of something like an EP rather than going full-blown studio album?
Yes, and the reason for that is because I was having a lot of distribution conversations with people who I might actually potentially sign with next year.
Yep.
And so they aren't labels, they're more of a distribution group which will assist in me just getting more attention on Spotify and attention in Apple Music and all of those kind of areas. And so I've been chatting with them for about 6 months now, and that's a long conversation to have. And so I still feel pretty positive about this particular group of people, and I feel like through 6 months you do get a gauge of a company and the intention behind what they want to do with you, I guess. And so nothing is signed as yet, although those conversations have delayed my album because they want to sign that album, you know. And so in the meantime, I could have waited and not released anything, or I could have put an EP out to bridge that gap a little bit. And so after the album, I was thinking of releasing another one that was all love songs, just acoustic, romantic, cheesy love songs. And because the album keeps getting pushed back, I decided to bring that forward and not do an album, but just do a 4-track EP like I used to. And so that's what I'm doing. I've called it No Longer Hollow, and that's because this year, as we've kind of talked about, I felt somewhat hollow in some regard with not being able to do things I love. And I find that through a lot of my albums or EPs, I will title them under what I require at the time. And so that's why my previous EP was called Clarity, because I felt so cluttered at that time in my life and I was seeking clarity, so I called it that. And this time I've called it No Longer Hollow because I don't want to feel that way anymore. And I know that sounds depressing, and I'm definitely not, but I feel like all of us, especially again with this whole COVID landscape and the uncertainty and how unprecedented it is, I've felt less cheerful and alive than I usually do. And I felt like these songs, even though they're not really based around me as such, they're more empathetic toward other people and their experiences with love. The title itself has been something which I've kind of resonated with and something I thought that I could use in a project. And so the next 2 songs are coming out shortly. They might be before or after this release of this interview, but then that will be completely wrapped, and I will have the freedom then to actually release my brand new album, which is a lot more electronic and produced.
Yay. Well, I know we've touched on a lot of stuff of like your songwriting and loving writing and words as you're growing up, but obviously philosophy is a massive passion for you. Like, it's not a secret. You've had an album titled that. You've also had Philosophical Records, which is another project of yours with the tagline, a label for lyricists. Can you talk me through that origin of like coming up with an independent label just alongside everything else you're doing? Like, was it because there was no one around to kind of help you with what you wanted to do? Like, what was that little backstory?
Definitely. Originally, it's so interesting. When I first released on DistroKid, which is just like an independent distribution platform, I started on TuneCore and moved over to DistroKid. It said, "What's your label?" And in the subtext, it was like, if you don't have one, make one up. And I was like, okay, well, I really enjoy philosophy and I love reading about that. And I actually thought of that name maybe like 6 months prior. And so then I just wrote it in there. And from then I actually started to figure out that it could be an actual independent label. And so at this point in my career, I don't feel resourceful enough to bring anyone else on. I feel like I couldn't give them the time they deserve. But down the line, I'm hoping that the label itself will grow alongside me, so then that it has notoriety that people will want to jump on board with when I can bring them on, you know. And so I found that I don't have a label, so why not make my own? I'm pretty accustomed to just creating my own things at this point, and so it's nice for me to know that I have that outlet and that avenue if I need it. And so I guess that's initially, it was created out of simply wanting to put something in like a little text field, and from there it's been a thing for like 4 years now, and I've released all my music under it, and now it does have its own little entity, and I have made it a company, and I actually trade under Philosophical Records now, you know. And so I think the sky's the limit with that, and when I do get more resources and maybe do bring more of a team on, I can make that more of a legitimized thing for other people instead of just me.
Yeah, it's an extremely resourceful thing, but sometimes the best things do come out of those off-the-cuff moments. And have you ever had anything else like that happen, like with whether it's be a song or something? Like, do you just get those lightning bolt moments and suddenly it changes your whole life?
100%, yeah. Again, it sounds really weird and meta, and I totally understand it. But when I speak about the whole subconscious writing thing, it feels true to me. And I will have to preface again, because I feel like people always get weird about it, that it could literally just be imagination and creativity. However, I feel as though there's a reason I've written about schizophrenia and kidnapped children and things of that nature when I've not been through that, and I don't know anyone who has been through that. I might have seen some things on television, maybe it was inspired by that, I'm not sure. But I sing these songs live, and when I meet people afterwards and they say, have you met someone, do you know someone, or do you have schizophrenia? Because what you wrote and what you sang is so prevalent and true to me. And I'm like, I don't know anybody that's been through that, and I don't know how I could write something that is so real for you. And that's why sometimes I bring up the subconscious writing, because it's like, how else does that come through, you know? And I didn't intend to write that, it just came one day, and there the song was, you know? And then Breadcrumbs was written a long time ago, which is from the perspective of a young child who's been kidnapped, and what they would say, what they would think if they could write a letter to their parents, and all these different things, which again, I've not experienced. So all of them are off the cuff, you know. There's no like preconceived idea as to what I want to create when I go into a songwriting session. I simply try and allow my emotions to do that for me. And that's a scary thing, because there's no actual model behind my songwriting. So I'll finish a song and feel as though I can probably never do that again, because I don't know how it happened. And so I just need to have like faith in an ability that I'll be able to continuously go and create things. And so I've gone through many periods in my life where I felt afraid that it's all a fluke and I'm a fraud and I can't do it again, you know, because I don't actually have a select model or mechanism perhaps that I can follow along or use. It's kind of random, you know. So
it's that I feel a lot of creatives, like no matter what field you're in, it's that imposter syndrome aspect always plays into it. But when you are essentially a creative conduit by the sound of it, like there's something tapping into it, but that's just that flow state on steroids by the sound of it. That's absolutely incredible. I guess going on a performance factor, like I know the last 2 years especially, and it would be just so heartbreaking. Everyone's been through it, and you of course have had a lot of probably false starts with getting overseas and crossing fingers for Europe. But can you go back right, you know, obviously we spoke about the busking stuff. Can you take me back to the first time you played a proper gig, like not a busk, not in front of the family, got up on stage, it was a proper playing gig with Jacob Lee. Where was it? How was it? Was there anything memorable from it? What was that moment like?
I think one of my final shows, or at least the most memorable, was in Bucharest. And that is where I had no idea that anyone knew who I was there at all. Like on my analytics and metrics, it doesn't say Bucharest. Like there's other areas that are more prevalent with, I guess, the numbers. And so I went there not having any idea whether the show had sold out, whether there were like 10 people coming. And I was walking around the city because I was being directed by the promoter who was organizing everything, and he was allowing us to be tourists. And every 5 minutes someone was like, it's Jacob Lee, and we'd get a photo, and I was like, what is happening? Like I've never had that before, especially in Australia. Maybe now and then in America, but like it's not common for me at all. And that's probably because usually my hair is out in videos and I have my hair up and people are like, I don't know who that guy is. But it was happening really consistently, and I was just like, what is going on? And he then told me that we'd sold out the show. And it was over 2 nights of 500 each, so it was 1,000 people. And again, for me, that's a big deal. So we finished our little touristy moment, and we went backstage, and he took some photos of the line, which was all the way around the block. And I went and performed the show and realized that most of these people didn't speak English, and yet they were singing all my lyrics and they knew all my words. And I was getting like super emotional on stage.
I just
like,
got goosebumps.
There's actually there's a video on YouTube of me kind of crying on stage. Like there was a moment where I sang Demons first in the set, and for the encore they were chanting Demons again, because that seems to be the song which a lot of them really resonated with. And I'd never heard of an artist singing the same song twice in a set, and I was like, whatever, I'll sing it again. And the second time was much more acoustic, because the first one had a little bit more playback and track behind it. and everyone was so, you couldn't even hear me. It was just so loud in that room of people singing that song. And so I had a moment where I just like turned around and I was just like, what is happening? Like, again, what I'd done in my garage, in my dad's garage before I even had a house, that was so cluttered and crappy, and like there was nothing inspiring about that garage. Writing all this music in that, and then knowing that it was transcending to the other side of the planet, to all of these people, and they were like, you could see the emotion within them. I was like, what I'm doing is working, you know, like what I'm doing is like actually working, and it's crazy. So yeah.
Well, that was preempting something I was going to ask you, like, do you still get pinch me moments after so many things you've done? But like clearly just in that moment, that thread from that moment in that garage, but even beyond that, back to those like early days, like that whole thread is just incredible. So instead of asking about pinch me moments, given how much you've done, I know there's so much more that you're obviously going to plan to do, but do you secretly, are you one of those people that has a bucket list event or person you want to tour with or place you want to play at? Like, is there anything on the metaphorical list you want to tick off, or are you just happy with literally how this journey unfolds organically?
I think organically is nice. Yeah. However, there's always something that you want. I've always wanted to play at Red Rocks in Colorado just because it's beautiful, and it's like a massive, just rocky landscape that it looks like you're almost in a cave, you know, and so I've wanted to play that, and that's something I really am looking forward to doing one day. I think young me would love to tour with Ed Sheeran just because I was so obsessed when I was younger, and he's still amazing, but there was a moment for me where he was like this lyrical genius, especially I think with Multiply or maybe even Plus, like the really old albums that he did where he was more focused on the stories instead of more of the pop stuff he's doing now. And so I think that would be like young Jacob would just be like freaking out about that. And so I feel as though apart from those two things, I'm more just interested in trying to connect with as many people as I can, and doing that through emotional music and lyrical, narrative-driven storyline music. And that's why I want to create this little library. I've had this goal in my mind to create like a lyrical library one day, and where it's not only mine, because that would fit like this much, but I want to actually go and locate and discover all these millions of artists who are prioritizing lyricism and doing poetry and things of that nature, and put all that into one place. And I think that is, again, why I'm so interested in this brand new technology, because you can do that virtually as well, and you don't need so much money to actually get a place and do that. You can do it virtually, and people can go and visit it virtually, which is exciting. So that might be the first step for me in doing that. And secondly, maybe one day I could create my own actual lyrical library one day. So we'll see. But I am driven by that really odd goal, to be honest. It's not like a goal of playing for a certain amount of people or going to a particular place apart from Red Rocks. It's more that I just am obsessed with words for some reason, and I don't know why. You know, it's just what I love.
I think it's ingrained in you by the sound of it, and I think you're obviously on the right pathway, because when stuff happens organically, I think it's not always fate, it's not always a sign, but just as stuff flows through like that, you can see behind you and you can see that it's all building towards that. So yeah, I mean, I would obviously 100% attend you with Ed Sheeran, but so would many other people, but whatever you do, it's going to be incredible. And on that topic, obviously you do have a new album in the works coming out in 2022. Is there anything else you are willing to reveal about what may be in the distant and not so distant future for Jacob Lee?
There's lots of different things, and I'm trying to figure out what the most relevant is to touch on. I guess I'll try and be brief about all of them. Like, first and foremost, the album, obviously, and I actually don't have a title for it yet. Usually I start with a title because I have an idea of what the concept is going to be. This one, because it has been very much produced by myself, I've found that my emotional energy has gone toward creating the bed and the instrumental rather than the lyrics. And so I've found that I've had to then like almost import the lyrics on top, or implant them on top in a way, because usually I'll create in the moment and everything is very emotional and created right then and there. Because I've taught myself production, I've found that my energy has gone into, well, what's the best kick sound and like all of that kind of stuff, where then when I develop the lyrics a day later, I'm not in that moment anymore, and that's been tough. So I don't have a title for it yet, because I know what the songs and their concept is for the actual tracks themselves, but the entire concept of the album is still foreign to me. So I'm deciphering and figuring that out at the moment. But that's going to be at least a 10-track album. There's probably going to be more songs on it, and it is definitely a lot more electronic, which I'm loving right now. To me, it feels like a natural evolution, to be honest, between my previous work and now. And we'll see whether everyone enjoys it, but I have shown a few people the new songs, and everyone's quite excited about them, which gives me confidence. So that is one thing. The second is obviously the vast array of NFT projects that I'm doing, and I don't feel like I want to get into that too much because it is a rabbit hole. But I've decided to create some things related to music and some things which are completely irrelevant and not related to music at all, but it's given me an outlet to create in a way that I've never done before. And so it's called the Conscience Codex, which is this brand new universe that I'm trying to develop virtually, which was inspired by Conscience, the album, but it has taken a new form in a whole different way, which I can probably touch on another time. But it's that alongside the tour in February, going through most of Europe and the UK, and hopefully doing some Australian tours next year as well. And yeah, I guess those are the three kind of priorities that I can briefly touch on. And I guess if there is anything that I feel like I want to touch on further, I can probably just do that in a live stream down the line.
Totally. Give people something to look forward to. And obviously continuing being a kick-ass dad and everything else that you've got going on outside of it. Well, to wrap us up today, I guess you're at a very unique moment in your career. I feel you've had such a big backstory, you've had such a journey. This has not been an overnight thing, as with so many people, it's so easy to think, oh, he's just done it overnight and he's just popped up. What is the biggest lesson you've learnt so far in your career that at this point in time you will look back on and kind of hold on to as you further yourself into this next chapter of your career?
I think I'm most proud of the authenticity behind everything, and not allowing myself to get swayed by everyone else who has told me to be something else and told me what I'm doing isn't going to work, you know, and like I'm not where I want to be, so they might be right, but I feel like I'm so much happier in knowing that I'm creating something which I personally feel is going to help people, and I'm not doing it just because I want to make a shit ton of money or I want to get a certain level of fame so I can boost my ego. I just don't care. Like, I've just never cared about it. Like, I know that fame and exposure and money will be helpful for me to reach more people, that's obvious, but it's never been the driving factor to any of this. Like, creation is the whole point for me, and I feel like knowing that the journey is the destination has given me a lot of peace, and I'm not always kind of chasing, and I do have to remind myself sometimes not to continuously chase, because there is a balance there, and I feel like having that, like, something to reach for is obviously motivating. But recognizing and being grateful for the moment and where I am and what I've done, and knowing that I have kind of still done this alone, and it's something that I don't really feel like I need to continuously bring up, but it's, I reminisce sometimes and go like, holy shit, like, not many independent artists are streaming as well as I am, or getting the viewership that I am, and I feel as though all of this time alone figuring out how to send an email properly and like how to interact with my fan base in a way that they resonate with, and it's taken a very long time. And plus, like, I was never articulate. Like, I was so bad at talking, and I'm probably not that great now, but I was really, really introverted, and I couldn't interact with people on a very, on a decent scale, I guess. And so I've spent years of my life trying to figure out how to be more articulate and get a point across in a way that was impactful. And I feel like that's something I'm proud of too, because I would always be so in my head and like, how do I look, what am I saying, like just all the thoughts that a lot of introverted people have. And it's been difficult as someone who's had to be his own manager and label and represent myself in that way, and internally I'm just like wanting to shelter and hide, you know, like, so it's been a journey of gaining the confidence to be that person too. And so I feel like with all of what I've said, I have a long way to go, but I am proud of the fact that I do feel confident in who I am now, which is great. Yeah.
Well, not only are you articulate as a person, you're articulate as an artist as well, and I feel like this is just the beginning of yet another sensational chapter for you, one of many to come. I'm so grateful that you've been able to share with all of us a little insight into your world, and here's to 2022 and beyond, and all the magic that Jacob Lee is going to bring to everyone. So thank you so much for spending time.
Thank you, Tiana. I really appreciate it. This has been fun.
Likewise. I can't wait to hear the album.
Oh man, I'm excited to hear it finished as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you.
Likewise.